The champagne flute in my hand caught the chandelier light, refracting it into 1,000 fractured rainbows across the white linen tablecloth. Around me, 200 guests laughed and clinked glasses, their voices rising and falling like waves against the polished marble floors of the grand ballroom at the Fairmont in downtown Portland. But at my table, tucked in the far corner near the kitchen doors where the waitstaff rushed past with silver trays, there was only sparkling water and a wilting salad. That's more than adequate for her. I'd heard Diane whisper to the event coordinator earlier. She's always been particular about food. A lie dressed in concern, one of thousands. My name is Maya Hartwell. I'm 37 years old, and I make documentaries about people whose stories have been erased, overlooked, or deliberately buried. I've filmed refugees in border towns, wrongfully convicted prisoners, families torn apart by addiction and reunited by grace. I've spent the last 15 years of my life giving voice to the voiceless. Because my own voice was silenced for so long, I learned to amplify others. The USB drive in my clutch purse felt like it weighed 10 pounds, though I knew it was barely an ounce. Inside it, evidence, proof. The kind of truth that doesn't just change a story, it detonates it. I watched my father across the ballroom, his silver hair gleaming under the spotlights as he raised a glass to toast the crowd. Victor Hartwell, founder and CEO of Hartwell & Associates, one of the most successful commercial real estate development firms in the Pacific Northwest, 65 years old tonight. A self-made man, a pillar of the community, a devoted husband, a stranger to me. He smiled, and the crowd smiled back. Diane stood beside him in a floor-length emerald gown that probably cost more than my entire year's rent, her hand resting possessively on his arm. Her daughter, my stepsister, stood just behind them, radiant in champagne silk, her phone angled perfectly to capture every moment for her 100,000 Instagram followers. Blessed family, our daddy's girl. Portland elite, I'd seen the posts. Everyone had. What they hadn't seen was what I'd discovered 3 weeks ago. What I'd verified and documented with the same meticulous care I brought to every investigation. What sat encrypted on that tiny piece of metal and plastic, waiting. The question wasn't whether to reveal it. The question was whether I had the courage to watch everything burn. People romanticize family. They post about it on social media, frame photos of it on their walls, build their entire identities around it. Family is everything, they say. Blood is thicker than water. But they never talk about what happens when your family feels like drowning. My mother died when I was 9 years old. Pancreatic cancer, 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. I remember her laugh, the way she'd sing off-key while making breakfast, how she'd pull me into her lap and read to me even when I'd gotten too old for it. She had this lavender perfume. Nothing expensive, just something from the drugstore. But for years afterward, I'd stand in the perfume aisle at Target and smell every bottle, searching for that exact scent. I never found it. Dad remarried 18 months later. Too soon, people whispered, but not to his face. Never to his face. Diane Morrison came with impeccable credentials, a master's degree in art history, volunteer work with the Portland Museum of Art, a daughter from her first marriage who was exactly my age. "You'll be like sisters," everyone kept saying at the wedding. How wonderful for Maya to have a companion. Victoria, she went by Tori, had honey blonde hair, perfect teeth, and the kind of effortless confidence that comes from never being told you're not enough. Within a week of moving into our house in the West Hills, she'd claimed the bigger bedroom, the bathroom with the good light, and every ounce of my father's attention. And Diane? She was a master. She never yelled. Never hit. Never did anything that would leave a mark you could point to and say, "There, that's abuse." She was far more subtle than that. It started with small things. Comments that sounded like advice. "Maya, honey, are you sure you want to wear that? It's a bit young for you. I was 10. Maybe you should skip dessert tonight, sweetheart. You know how clothes fit better when we're mindful." I was 11, and a perfectly normal weight. By the time I was 12, I'd learned to make myself small in every possible way. Physically, emotionally, vocally. I ate less, spoke less, took up less space. Diane enrolled Tori in ballet, piano, horseback riding. She drove her to auditions for local theater productions and bragged to anyone who'd listen about her daughter's talents. Tori's such a natural performer, she'd say at dinner parties, her hand on Tori's shoulder. We're so proud of her. When I asked to take a photography class at the community center, Diane sighed. Oh, Maya, photography is such an isolated hobby, don't you think? Wouldn't you rather do something with other people? Something social? The implication was clear. There's something wrong with you. Something that needs fixing. My father never noticed. Or if he did, he never said anything. He was building an empire then, working 16-hour days, flying to Seattle and San Francisco and Los Angeles for meetings with investors and city planners. When he came home, he was exhausted, distracted. Diane would greet him at the door with a martini and a smile, and over dinner she'd regale him with stories of Tori's accomplishments. I learned not to interrupt. Learned not to share. When I tried, Dad, I got an A on my English essay, or Dad, can I show you this photo I took? Diane would interject smoothly. That's wonderful, Maya. Victor, did I tell you Tori was selected for the advanced ballet troupe? Every time. By 13, I stopped trying. Dinner became theater. I played my role, the quiet one, the forgettable one, the one who cleared plates and refilled water glasses while Diane and Tori sparkled under my father's gaze. Sometimes I'd test it just to see. I'd sit in complete silence for an entire meal and no one would notice. No one would ask why I wasn't talking, because I'd already disappeared. At 15, I started having panic attacks. The school counselor called them anxiety episodes and recommended therapy. Diane accompanied me to the appointment, sitting beside me in the therapist's office with a concerned expression. She's always been such a sensitive child, Diane told Dr. Peterson, a kind-faced woman in her 50s. We try to include her, but she pulls away. She's so different from Tori. Victoria just blooms wherever she's planted, you know? But Maya seems to prefer being alone. The therapist looked at me. Is that true, Maya? Do you prefer being alone? I felt Diane's eyes on me, felt the weight of her expectation. Yes, I said quietly. I like being alone. It was easier than explaining that being alone felt safer than being with people who made you feel invisible. I went to 3 more sessions. Then Diane stopped scheduling them. Dr. Peterson said you're making great progress, she told me. She thinks you're doing much better. I never saw Dr. Peterson again. Years later, I wondered what she'd actually said. But by then, I'd found my own therapy. I bought my first camera at 16 with money I'd saved from tutoring middle schoolers in math and English. It was a used Canon Rebel, scratched and dented, with a kit lens that had seen better days. The man at the camera shop, a grizzled old photographer named Joe who smelled like coffee and cigarettes, showed me how to adjust the aperture and shutter speed. Photography, he said, squinting through the viewfinder, is about seeing what others miss. It's about paying attention. I'd spent my entire life paying attention, watching, observing, learning, to read the room so I'd know when to speak and when to vanish. Now, I had a purpose for it. I started small. Photos of my neighbor's garden, the way morning light filtered through the Douglas firs in our backyard, close-ups of mushrooms growing on fallen logs in Forest Park. Then I got braver. I photographed homeless veterans under the Burnside Bridge, their weathered faces telling stories of sacrifice and abandonment. I captured immigrant families at the Saturday market, their children laughing despite everything they'd lost and left behind. I photographed truth. Diane hated it. Maya, why do you focus on such depressing subjects? She'd ask, her nose wrinkling as she scrolled through the photos on my camera. Why not take pictures of beautiful things? Flowers? Landscapes? These are beautiful, I said quietly. She laughed. Not kindly. Oh, honey, that's not beauty. That's poverty. There's a difference. But I kept shooting, and slowly something began to shift inside me. Behind the camera, I wasn't invisible. I was the observer, the documenter, the one who decided what mattered. For the first time in my life, I had control, not over what happened to me, but over how I chose to see the world. Senior year, I entered a photo essay about Portland's vanishing small businesses into a regional competition. 3 months later, I got a letter. I'd won first place. The prize included a small scholarship and an interview with a documentary filmmaker named Sarah Chen, who was teaching at Portland State University. I showed the letter to my father at dinner. He glanced at it, smiled vaguely. "That's great, sweetheart." Then Diane said, "Victor, we need to talk about Tori's graduation trip. She's been invited to spend the summer in Paris with the Hendersons. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." And just like that, my moment evaporated. But I met Sarah Chen anyway. She was 42, sharp-eyed, with gray-streaked hair she wore in a messy bun. She looked at my portfolio for 20 minutes without speaking, just turning pages, studying each image. Finally, she looked up. "You see people," she said. "Really see them. That's rare." I felt something crack open in my chest. "Thank you. Have you thought about film school?" I had. I'd thought about it constantly. But Diane had already made it clear. The family would pay for Tori's education at Chapman University in Southern California, where she'd study theater and film production. As for me, community college is perfectly respectable, Maya. Not everyone needs a fancy degree. I told Sarah this. She frowned. "That's bullshit," she said bluntly. "You have talent. Real talent. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." She wrote down the name of a program at PSU, told me about scholarships and grants, gave me her email address. "Apply," she said. "And when you get in, not if, when, let me know. I'll make sure you're in my workshop." I left that meeting feeling like I'd been given permission to want something. To believe I deserved it, I applied. I got in. And I told my father over breakfast one Saturday morning in April. "Dad, I got accepted to Portland State. Film and Media Studies. Full scholarship." He lowered his newspaper. That's wonderful, Maya. I'm proud of you." For a moment, I thought it might be enough. Thought maybe this was the beginning of him actually seeing me. Then Diane said, "Victor, don't forget we're meeting the Hendersons at 1 o'clock to discuss Tori's Paris trip. Maya, honey, you'll need to stay home and let the contractors in. They're redoing Tori's bathroom while she's away." I nodded, because that's what I did, but I also packed. And 3 months later, I moved into a tiny studio apartment in southeast Portland, 40 minutes and a world away from the house in the West Hills. I never moved back. College was revelation. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who cared about the same things I did. People who stayed up until 3 a.m., arguing about Terrence Malick's cinematography or the ethics of documentary filmmaking. People who saw cameras not as hobbies but as weapons against injustice. I thrived. Sarah Chen became my mentor, then my friend. She pushed me relentlessly, critiquing my work with brutal honesty but always believing I could do better. Under her guidance, I made my first real documentary, a 15-minute short about a group of former foster kids aging out of the system. It screened at a small festival in Eugene and won Audience Choice. "This is just the beginning," Sarah told me afterward. "You have something important to say." Don't stop. I didn't. After graduation, I cobbled together a career from freelance work, grants, and sheer stubbornness. I made films about migrant farm workers in the Willamette Valley, about the opioid crisis in rural Oregon, about women escaping domestic violence. Each film was an act of witnessing, an act of saying, "You matter. Your story matters." The films I couldn't make for myself, I made for others. My father came to one screening. Just one. A documentary about veterans experiencing homelessness that showed at the Northwest Film Center. He sat in the back row, arrived late, left early. Afterward, he sent a text. "Interesting work. Very eye-opening. Proud of you." Diane and Tori never came at all. I told myself I didn't care. Told myself I'd stopped needing their approval years ago. But late at night, alone in my apartment editing footage, I'd sometimes pull up their social media. Photos of family dinners I wasn't invited to. Vacations I didn't know about. Tori's engagement announcement. She was marrying Preston Ashford, heir to a timber fortune, with my father beaming beside her. The comments flooded in. Such a beautiful family. So blessed. Dad goals. I wasn't in any of the photos. It shouldn't have hurt. I'd built a good life. I had friends who loved me, work that mattered. A small apartment I'd turned into a sanctuary with plants on every surface and film posters covering the walls. I was okay, but sometimes okay feels like a consolation prize. Then came the email. It arrived on a Tuesday morning in late September while I was drinking coffee and reviewing footage from my latest project. The subject line read, Victor Hartwell, 65th birthday celebration. You're invited. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Dear Maya, you are cordially invited to celebrate Victor Hartwell's 65th birthday on Saturday, October 21st, at the Grand Ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel in downtown Portland. Cocktail hour begins at 6 p.m., with dinner and dancing to follow. Please RSVP by October 1st. Warmly, the Hartwell family. No personal note. No, we'd love to see you, or we've missed you. Just a formal invitation, identical to the 200 others they were probably sending. I should have deleted it. Should have sent a polite decline. Instead, I sat there, remembering the little girl who used to sit on her father's lap while he read the newspaper, who believed she was his whole world. Remembering the teenager who learned to make herself invisible, who swallowed every hurt and humiliation because she thought if she could just be good enough, quiet enough, perfect enough, maybe he'd see her again. Remembering the young woman who left and built a life from nothing, who learned to be her own validation. And I thought, what if I showed up? Not as the forgotten daughter, but as myself. As someone who'd survived them and succeeded anyway. I clicked RSVP, I selected attending. I hit send. The decision to attend the party should have been the end of it. Show up, smile, prove I'd thrive despite them, then leave. Simple. Clean. But life rarely works that way. 2 weeks before the party, my best friend Jasmine knocked on my apartment door at 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Jasmine Lee was an investigative journalist for the Willamette Week, all of 5 feet tall with a pixie cut and the tenacity of a pit bull. We'd met in Sarah Chen's workshop and bonded over our shared obsession with uncovering truth. She looked agitated. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into my living room. About your family. I felt my stomach drop. What about them? She pulled out her laptop, opened it on my coffee table. I was at Cafe Nell this afternoon working on a story. Your stepsister was there. Tori? So? So she was on the phone. And Maya, she wasn't exactly being discreet. Jasmine pulled up a voice memo on her phone. I recorded part of it. Before you get mad, yes, I know it's legally gray, but I'm a journalist and I had a hunch. Listen. She pressed play, Tori's voice. Unmistakable, filtered through. Preston, baby, I'm telling you, it's basically done. Kyle has the papers drawn up. All we need is Dad's signature and he doesn't even know what he's signing. A pause. No, Diane's handling it. She'll get him to sign at the party. You know how he is when he's had a few drinks and everyone's celebrating. He won't read the fine print, another pause. Tori laughed. I know, right? And by the time he figures it out, the transfer will be complete. The company, the properties, everything. Diane's name, then mine. Preston. We're talking about $150 million in assets. Maybe more. The recording ended. I sat frozen. Jasmine watched me carefully. Maya, your stepmother and stepsister are planning to steal your father's entire company. The words didn't compute at first. I replayed them in my head, trying to make sense of it. They can't. That's fraud. That's exactly what it is. And from what I'm hearing, they've been setting it up for months. Maybe years. I stood up, paced to the window, looked out at the Portland skyline blurred by rain. My hands were shaking. You're sure? I'm a journalist, Maya. I'm trained to be sure. And once I heard that, I did some digging. She pulled up several windows on her laptop. Your stepmother has been steadily consolidating financial control. She's on all the bank accounts, she's co-signed on the business loans, She's listed as co-owner on 3 of the major properties, and 6 months ago, she created an LLC called Morrison Holdings. Want to guess who the sole members are? I didn't need to guess. Diane and Tori. Bingo. And 2 weeks ago, there was a filing with the Oregon Secretary of State, articles of transfer for Hartwell and Associates. They're planning to move all the assets into Morrison Holdings, effectively cutting your father out of the company he built. I felt sick. Does he know? Based on what I'm seeing? No, they've been careful. Really careful. Your father trusts Diane implicitly. Why wouldn't he? She's his wife. She's been managing the household finances, the social calendar, all of it. He's focused on the business side. He has no idea she's been undermining him. I sank back onto the couch. 20 years of memories crashed over me. Every dismissal. Every insult. Every time Diane had made me feel worthless. And suddenly I understood. It was never about me. I wasn't defective or unlovable or wrong. I was a threat. I was Victor Hartwell's biological daughter. The one with a legal claim. The one who might notice things. The one who needed to be pushed aside, minimized, erased. They'd spent 2 decades teaching me I didn't matter, so I'd never look closely enough to see what they were doing. Maya, Jasmine said gently. What do you want to do? I looked at her. Can you get proof? Real documented proof? She grinned. It was not a nice grin. I thought you'd never ask. For the next 2 weeks, Jasmine and I worked like we were making a documentary. Because in a way, we were. Jasmine had access to databases and public records I couldn't touch. She pulled property filings, business registrations, loan documents. She found a suspicious pattern of transfers. Assets being moved from Victor's name to joint ownership with Diane, then to Morrison Holdings. They've been planning this for at least 3 years, Jasmine said one night, her eyes red from staring at screens. Maybe longer. This is sophisticated, Maya. They hired lawyers, accountants. This isn't amateur hour. I contributed what I could. Years of being invisible in my own family meant I'd learned to observe, to remember details. I recalled conversations I'd overheard, strange phone calls Diane had taken in other rooms, the way she'd steered my father away from certain topics. And then I remembered something else. 3 years ago, during one of my rare visits home for Christmas, Tori had asked to borrow my laptop. Hers had crashed, and she needed to upload photos to Instagram. I'd said yes, then forgotten about it, but I'd never changed my password. And I used the same cloud storage for all my devices. Jasmine, I said slowly, what if I told you Tori might have files backed up to my cloud account? Jasmine's eyes lit up. Are you serious? It took us 3 hours to find it. Buried in a folder labeled Wedding Planning 2022 were dozens of documents. Emails between Diane and a lawyer named Kyle Stevenson. Drafts of transfer agreements. Financial projections. Even a timeline. The party was the target date. They're planning to have him sign something at the celebration, I said, scrolling through an email thread. Something disguised as a routine business document. Diane's going to present it to him in front of everyone, make it seem like no big deal. He'll sign it without reading it. And once he does, 48 hours later, Morrison Holdings takes ownership of everything. The company, the properties, the investments, all of it. Jasmine sat back. Your father will be left with nothing. Worse than nothing. He'll have a company in name only with no assets. They'll probably force him out, offer him some nominal severance. And because he signed the papers willingly, he'll have almost no legal recourse. Jesus. We sat in silence. Finally, Jasmine said, You could go public with this. I could write the story. It would destroy them, I thought about it. The headlines. The scandal. Portland socialite and daughter commit massive fraud. It would be everywhere. Diane and Tori would be ruined. But so would my father. His business associates would wonder how he'd missed it. His reputation would suffer. The company he'd built over 40 years would be tainted by scandal even if he retained ownership. I can't, I said quietly. Not publicly. Not like that. Then what? I looked at the screen, at the mountain of evidence. At the proof of betrayal so profound it made every childhood wound seem small by comparison. I'm going to tell him. Privately. I'm going to give him the evidence and let him decide. Jasmine studied me. You're giving him a choice. He never gave me one. I'm not going to be like them. She reached over and squeezed my hand. You're a better person than I am? No. I'm just tired of carrying other people's cruelty. We spent the next 3 days compiling everything. I organized it the way I'd organize a documentary, chronologically, with clear evidence chains, cross-referenced and verified. Every email, every document, every financial transfer. I encrypted it all on a USB drive, and then I bought a dress for the party. Not something invisible. Not something apologetic. Something that said, I'm here. And you're going to hear me. The Fairmont's Grand Ballroom looked like something from a movie, all crystalline gold with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Portland skyline. A jazz quartet played softly in one corner. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than my monthly grocery bill. 200 guests mingled, their laughter echoing off the marble floors. I recognized faces from my childhood, business associates, country club friends, society matrons who'd once patted my head and told me what a shame it was I didn't have my mother's beauty. I stood near my assigned table and watched. Diane held court near the bar, resplendent in emerald silk that probably cost $5,000. She touched arms, air-kissed cheeks, laughed at jokes with her head tilted just so. The perfect hostess. The perfect wife. Tori worked the crowd with Preston, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. She'd positioned herself near the photographer, making sure every moment was documented for social media. And my father. My father stood at the center of it all, silver-haired and distinguished in his tuxedo, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. He looked happy, successful, surrounded by love. He had no idea he was standing in a room full of knives. I'd planned to wait until after dinner, to pull him aside quietly, show him the drive, give him time to process. But then I saw Diane lean close and whisper something in his ear, saw her gesture toward a side room, the office. She's taking him to the office. My heart hammered. If she got him alone, got him to sign those papers. I moved quickly, threading through the crowd, keeping to the edges. No one noticed me. They never did. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter, lined with portraits of Portland's founding families. I followed the sound of voices to a half-open door at the end. My father's temporary office for the evening, a converted meeting room with a desk, laptop and a view of the city lights. I hesitated in the doorway. He was alone. Maya? He turned, surprise evident on his face. I didn't think you'd come. The honesty of it stung. He genuinely hadn't expected me to show up to his birthday party. Why wouldn't I said quietly. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Well, it's been a while. And I know family gatherings aren't always easy for you, easy for me, as if I was the problem. As if I'd chosen distance instead of having it imposed on me. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me. Pulled the USB drive from my clutch. Dad, I need to show you something. He frowned. Now? Maya, I have 200 guests. It's about Diane and Tori and what they're planning to do tonight. That stopped him. What are you talking about? I crossed to the desk, plugged in the drive, opened the laptop. Just, please, watch this. Then decide if your guests can wait. He studied my face, maybe seeing something there he'd missed for years. Then he sat down. I pulled up the first file. An email from Diane to Kyle Stevenson dated 8 months earlier. Victor is completely focused on the Seattle expansion. He trusts me to handle everything else. By the time we move the assets, it will be too late for him to object. The company will be ours. My father read it. Then read it again. This has to be fake. Some kind of mistake. Keep reading. I showed him everything. The transfer documents. The LLC formation. The timeline. The recorded conversation from the cafe. With each piece of evidence, I watched his face change. Confusion became disbelief, became horror, became something I'd never seen before. Grief. When the last file closed, he sat in silence. The music from the ballroom drifted through the walls, absurdly cheerful. How long have you known? His voice was hoarse. 2 weeks? And you're telling me now? I'm telling you it all. He looked up at me. You could have gone to the press. Could have destroyed them publicly. Why didn't you? I pulled over a chair, sat down across from him. For the first time in decades, we were eye to eye, because that would have destroyed you too. And despite everything, despite all the years you looked past me. I didn't want to hurt you? His eyes filled. Maya? I spent my whole childhood trying to be seen by you, trying to matter, and I was never enough. Diane made sure of that. She pushed me out so thoroughly that I almost believed I deserved it. A tear slid down his cheek. Victor Hartwell, the man who never showed emotion in business, crying in front of his daughter. I failed you, he whispered. God, Maya, I failed you completely. Yes, I said simply. You did. The truth sat between us like a living thing. But you're here now, he said. You came to warn me. After everything, you came. I didn't come for you, I said honestly. I came because it was the right thing to do. Because I'm not them. I'm not cruel just because I was hurt. He covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. I sat there watching him break. Feeling nothing at first, then something. Not satisfaction. I'd thought exposing the truth would feel triumphant, vindicating. But it just felt sad, all those years. All that loss. And for what? Finally, he looked up. What were you going to do if I hadn't come in here? Find you. Stop you from signing whatever Diane was going to present. Give you the drive. The rest would have been up to you. You really thought I might not believe you. You never believed me before. The words landed like stones, true and heavy and impossible to deny. He stood slowly, walked to the window, looked out at the city he'd helped build. I loved your mother, he said quietly. When she died, I didn't know how to be a father and a person at the same time. The business made sense. It had rules, clear outcomes. You just needed love, and I didn't know how to give it without her. So you replaced her. Fast. I thought I was giving you a family, a mother figure, a sister. You gave me strangers who resented my existence. He turned. I see that now. Do you? Or are you just saying what I want to hear? It was the most honest I'd ever been with him. No filter, no making myself small. He met my eyes. I see it. I see all of it, and I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix it, I said. The childhood I needed is gone. But you can still choose what happens next. He looked back at the laptop, at the evidence of betrayal. She was going to take everything. Yes, I would have had nothing. Yes, and you stopped it. I gave you the information. What you do with it is your choice. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, come with me. My father straightened his tie, wiped his eyes, and walked out of the office with his shoulders squared. I followed, my heart pounding. We didn't return to the ballroom. Instead, he led me through a service corridor, up a back staircase to the hotel suite where he'd apparently been getting ready earlier. Diane was there, touching up her makeup. She turned, smile fixed, then faltered when she saw me. Victor? What's going on? Why is Maya here? Sit down, Diane. Something in his voice made her hesitate. The smile slipped. Darling, we have guests. Sit down. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folding in her lap. The picture of innocent concern. My father pulled out his phone, sent a text. 30 seconds later, there was a knock at the door. Tori walked in, Preston trailing behind her. Dad, Mom said you needed... She stopped when she saw me. What is she doing here? Everyone sit, my father said. His voice had changed. This was Victor Hartwell, the CEO, the man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals. Diane's eyes darted between us. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out what had happened. Tori looked annoyed, then wary. Victor, really, this can wait until after... How long? He asked quietly. How long have you been planning to steal my company? The air left the room. Diane's face went white. Tori's mouth opened, closed. Preston took a step backward, as if distance might protect him. I don't know what you're talking about, Diane said, her voice steady but her hands trembling. Victor, that's ridiculous. Has someone been telling you lies? Morrison Holdings, he said. Ring a bell? Tori flinched. Diane's carefully constructed mask cracked. The LLC you created 6 months ago. The one designed to hold all my assets once you tricked me into signing them over. Tonight, actually. At my birthday party. In front of 200 witnesses so I'd be too embarrassed to read the fine print. Dad, that's not… Tori started. Don't. His voice cut like glass. I've seen the emails. The contracts. The transfers you've been making for 3 years. I've heard the phone conversations. I know about Kyle Stevenson and the documents you were going to present downstairs. Diane stood abruptly. Victor, you're upset. Someone has clearly been manipulating you. Maya showed me the truth. All eyes turned to me. I stood by the door, silent, watching. Diane's expression transformed. The concern melted away, replaced by something cold and calculating. Of course, Maya. She said my name like poison. The jealous daughter who never could accept that her father moved on. Who's been bitter and resentful for 20 years. Stop, my father said. Who would do anything to destroy this family? I said stop. The shout echoed off the walls. I'd never heard him raise his voice like that. Not once in my entire life. You don't get to do that, he said, his voice shaking. You don't get to gaslight me, not now. Not ever again. Diane's face contorted. The beautiful mask she'd worn for 2 decades finally shattered completely. You think she's innocent? Diane spat. You think she came here out of the goodness of her heart? She wants your money, Victor. She's always wanted it. Why do you think she never visited? Never called? She was waiting for you to die so she could claim her inheritance. The lie was so audacious, so completely inverted from reality, that I almost laughed. I never wanted his money, I said quietly. I wanted a father. Diane whirled on me. You were a ghost in your own life, sulking in corners, refusing to engage, making everyone uncomfortable with your presence. I tried to help you, to bring you out of your shell, but you preferred to play the victim. You told me I was too fat at 11 years old. You canceled my therapy appointments. You made sure Dad never heard a word I said at dinner. You erased me. I gave you a family. You gave me trauma. The words hung in the air. Diane's chest heaved. Tori was crying now, mascara running down her perfect face. Mom, maybe we should just… She tried. Shut up. Victoria. Tori recoiled like she'd been slapped. My father walked to the desk, pulled out a folder. I had my lawyers draw these up 3 years ago, after Margaret died. I never thought I'd need them. He handed papers to Diane. Divorce papers. With a prenuptial agreement that you signed 20 years ago. You get nothing from the marriage. No assets, no alimony. Just what you came in with. Diane stared at the documents, her hands shaking. You can't do this. I already did. My lawyers filed them an hour ago. You have 30 days to vacate the house. That's my home. It's my house. It was never yours. He turned to Tori. I've had the company lawyers review every transaction you and your mother made over the past 3 years. We're unwinding all of it. Every transfer, every signature. You're also fired from your position as marketing consultant. Effective immediately. You can't fire me, Tori shrieked. I'm your daughter. No, he said quietly, looking at me. She's my daughter. You're the person who helped your mother try to destroy everything I built. Preston, who'd been silent this whole time, cleared his throat. Mr. Hartwell, I had no knowledge of any of this. Tori never told me. Get out, my father said. All of you, get out of my sight. Diane drew herself up, trying to reclaim some dignity. This isn't over, Victor. I'll fight you on every… you can try. But I have documentation of attempted fraud. Criminal fraud. If you push this, I'll press charges. You'll go to prison. Is that what you want? The fight drained out of her. She looked suddenly old. The Botox and fillers no longer enough to hide the bitterness underneath. You'll regret this, she said softly. You're choosing a daughter who abandoned you over a wife who stood by you for 20 years. You didn't stand by me, he said. You positioned yourself to destroy me. There's a difference. Diane grabbed her purse, her hand shaking so badly she dropped it twice. Tori followed sobbing. Preston hesitated, then scurried after them like a rat abandoning a sinking ship. The door closed. My father and I stood in the silence. The party, I said finally. You have 200 guests downstairs, he laughed. It was not a happy sound. I can't go back down there. Not tonight. Not pretending everything's fine. What are you going to do? He looked at me. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time in 20 years. I'm going to send everyone home. Make an excuse. Then I'm going to start dealing with the consequences of being blind for 2 decades. He crossed to me, stopped a few feet away. Like he wasn't sure if he had permission to come closer. Maya, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but would you stay? Just for a little while. I don't want to be alone right now. I thought about leaving. Walking out the same way I'd walked out at 18, disappearing into my own life, letting him deal with the wreckage he'd allowed to be built. It would have been fair. It would have been justified. But I stayed. Not because he deserved it. Because I did. Because walking away would have meant they still had power over me. I'll stay, I said. For a little while. The next morning, Portland woke to a society scandal that would dominate the news cycle for weeks. Prominent developer's wife. Accused of fraud scheme. Society marriage ends in criminal investigation. Hartwell family torn apart by alleged financial conspiracy. Jasmine had written the story, but only after my father gave permission. He wanted it public. Wanted people to know what Diane and Tori had attempted. Not for revenge, though there was probably some of that, but for protection. Making it public meant they couldn't spin the narrative, couldn't claim he was the villain. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Diane's society friends dropped her within 48 hours. The women who'd lunched with her, vacationed with her, attended her charity galas, they all released. Carefully worded statements expressing shock and disappointment, before scrubbing their social media of any photos that included her. In Portland's elite circles, fraud was forgivable. Getting caught was not. Tori's Instagram went from 100,000 followers to 30,000 in a week. The comments were vicious. Preston broke off the engagement in a statement released through his family's lawyers, citing irreconcilable differences and concerns about character. Translation: I'm not going down with this ship. Kyle Stevenson, the lawyer who'd helped orchestrate the scheme, was disbarred pending criminal investigation. The Oregon State Bar moved faster than I'd ever seen them move. And my father looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. I went to see him at the house in West Hills, the same house I'd grown up in, though it felt different now. Smaller somehow. Less intimidating. He'd lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. I've been going through her things, he said, leading me through rooms that used to feel like a museum, finding things I missed, or chose not to see. In Diane's office, a room I'd never been allowed to enter as a child, he showed me what he'd discovered. Spreadsheets tracking his every movement, calendars marking business trips, notes on his habits, his routines, his vulnerabilities. She studied me, he said quietly. Like I was a mark, a target. She was a con artist. That's what they do. He sank into a chair. How did I miss it? I could have said a dozen cruel things. Could have pointed out all the red flags he'd ignored. All the times I'd tried to tell him something was wrong, and he'd chosen Diane's version of reality over mine. Instead, I said, people believe what they want to believe. You wanted a partner, a family. She gave you the illusion of one, while planning to take everything. Yes. He looked at me. You saved me. You know that, right? If you hadn't found those files, hadn't come to the party, in 6 months I'd have been broken. I didn't do it to save you, I said honestly. I did it because I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. Even after everything, I couldn't let them destroy you. Why? It was the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. Because, I said slowly, cruelty compounds. Diane was cruel to me and it damaged me. But if I'd been cruel back, if I'd let you be destroyed when I could have prevented it, it would have damaged me more. I would have become like them. He stood, walked to the window. The view overlooked the city, the same view I'd stared at as a teenager, dreaming of escape. I'm selling the house, he said. Too many ghosts. I'm buying a small place out by Sauvie Island. Something simple. Somewhere I can think. That sounds good. Maya? He turned. Would you consider having dinner with me? Once a week, maybe. I know I don't deserve it, but I'd like to try. To actually be your father. If you'll let me. I wanted to say no. Wanted to protect myself from further disappointment. But I also thought about the girl I'd been, camera in hand, documenting other people's pain because I couldn't face my own. And I thought about the woman I'd become. Someone who'd built a life from nothing. Who'd learned that strength wasn't about walls. It was about choosing vulnerability despite the risk. Once a month, I said. To start. We'll see how it goes. His face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This doesn't erase anything. I'm not going to pretend the past didn't happen. I don't want you to pretend. I want, he paused, searching for words. I want to know you. The real you. The person you became despite me, not because of me. That person, I said, makes documentaries about uncomfortable truths, about systems that fail people, about families that break. If we're going to do this, you're going to hear things you don't want to hear. Good, he said. I've had enough comfortable lies to last a lifetime. The first dinner was awkward. We met at a quiet restaurant in southeast Portland, the kind of place where local artists hung their paintings and the menu featured sustainable, organic ingredients. Not his usual scene. Usually he preferred the expensive steakhouses downtown, but he didn't complain. We talked about surface things at first. The weather. The trailblazers. The construction project disrupting traffic on Burnside. Then, halfway through the meal, he said, "Tell me about your work. Your documentaries. Really tell me. I've only seen the one, so I did." I told him about the foster care film, about the interviews with teenagers who'd aged out of the system with nowhere to go. About the veteran I'd followed for 6 months, documenting his struggle with PTSD and homelessness. About the woman who'd escaped domestic violence and built a new life, only to lose custody of her children because she couldn't afford a good lawyer. These are hard stories, he said quietly. They're important stories. Why do you focus on them? On pain? I set down my fork, because I know what it's like to be invisible. To have your story ignored, because it makes people uncomfortable. Every person I film, every story I tell, it's me saying, you matter. Your experience matters. Someone sees you. The thing you needed. The thing everyone needs. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the film about the domestic violence survivor. The one where she lost her kids. What happened to her? She's still fighting. I'm still documenting. It's a long-term project. How do you fund these? They can't be profitable. Grants. Sometimes commissions from organizations. Mostly I live cheap and work freelance between projects. And you're happy? Doing this? I considered the question. Happy isn't the right word. Fulfilled, maybe. I wake up every day knowing my work matters. That it changes things. Even if just for one person. So yes, I'm happy. He nodded slowly. I built an empire. Put my name on buildings. Made more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. And I'm not sure any of it made me happy. Money doesn't make people happy. Connection does. I'm starting to understand that. The second dinner was easier. The third easier still. By the 6th month, we had a rhythm. We'd meet at different restaurants around Portland, sometimes walking afterward through the city I'd claimed as my own. He asked questions. Really listened to the answers. Wanted to know about my friends, my projects, my thoughts on everything from politics to the best food carts in the city, and slowly, carefully, I let him in. Not all the way. Not yet, but enough that I could imagine someday, having something that resembled a relationship. He started attending my film screenings. All of them. He'd sit in the back row, and afterward, he'd wait while I talked to audience members, answered questions, made connections. Then we'd go get late-night coffee and he'd ask about the process, the choices I'd made, what I hoped people would take away. "You're really good at this," he said one night. "I mean it." "You have a gift?" "You sound surprised." "I am. Not because I didn't think you were talented, but because I never paid attention. I should have been going to your screenings 20 years ago. I should have been your biggest supporter?" "Yes," I said simply. "You should have been." He didn't make excuses. Just nodded. "I can't get those years back. But I can show up now, if you'll let me. You're here, aren't you? I want to do more than just show up to screenings. I want to help. I have resources, Maya. Money that could fund your projects. Get your films in front of bigger audiences." I shook my head. "No, why not?" "Because I need to know you value me, not what you can do for me. The money complicates that. If we're going to build something real, it can't be based on you writing checks." He looked hurt, then thoughtful. "Okay, I respect that. But the offer stands. If you ever change your mind." A year after the party, my documentary about the foster care system premiered at the Portland Film Festival. It was my most ambitious project yet. 3 years of filming, 2 hours of runtime, stories from 20 different kids aging out of the system. The theater was packed. Sarah Chen was there, Jasmine, my friends from college, and in the back row, trying to be unobtrusive, my father. When the lights came up, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The Q&A afterward was intense. People wanted to know how they could help, where they could donate, what organizations were doing the best work. I'd prepared a resource list, printed and ready to hand out. As the crowd dispersed, a woman approached me. She was in her 40s, well-dressed, with kind eyes. "Ms. Hartwell?" she said. "I'm Patricia Morrison with the Northwest Film Foundation. We'd like to discuss funding for your next project, and possibly a retrospective of your work." I blinked. The Northwest Film Foundation was one of the most prestigious arts organizations in the region. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you." She handed me a card. "Call me Monday. We'll set something up." After she left, my father appeared at my elbow. "Did that just happen?" "I think so. Maya, that's incredible. The foundation almost never approaches filmmakers. They have a 2-year waiting list." I looked at him suspiciously. "Did you have anything to do with this?" "No, I swear. I kept my promise." He held up his hands. "This is all you, your work, your talent." I believed him, and feeling believed felt better than any funding ever could. That summer, my father sold the house in West Hills. He bought a small cabin on Sauvie Island, right on the Columbia River, with a view of Mount Hood on clear days. He invited me to see it on a Saturday afternoon in July. I brought homemade blackberry pie, my mother's recipe, which I'd learned from her sister, my Aunt Louise. The cabin was small, but beautiful. Wood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, a deck that overlooked the river. "It's perfect," I said. "It's simple. I'm learning to appreciate simple." We sat on the deck, eating pie, watching boats drift by on the river. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was comfortable. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said suddenly. I looked over, surprised. "Dr. Nguyen. She specializes in family systems. I've been going twice a week. How's that going?" "Hard. She doesn't let me off the hook for anything." He smiled ruefully. "She asked me to do an exercise. To write down every time I prioritized work or Diane or Tori over you. Every missed recital, every dinner where I didn't listen. Every time you tried to tell me something was wrong and I dismissed it." That must have been a long list, 37 pages, single-spaced. I didn't know what to say. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I want you to know I'm working on it, on understanding what I did, why I did it, and how to be different. Dad, you don't have to forgive me. Dr. Nguyen says forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone. It's something you give if and when you're ready. I just want you to know I see it now, all of it. And I'm sorry." The apology settled over me like rain. Gentle, necessary, healing. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said honestly. "Not completely. There's too much. Too many years. I understand. But I'm willing to keep showing up. Keep trying. See where this goes. He nodded. That's more than I deserve, probably. But it's what I'm willing to give. We finished our pie. Watched the sun sink lower, painting the river in shades of gold and amber. Maya, he said quietly, your mother would be so proud of you, of what you've become, the work you do, the person you are. Tears pricked my eyes. You think so? I know so. She always saw people. Really saw them. You have that gift. You got it from her. I got some of it from you, too, I admitted. The persistence. The refusal to give up. That's you. Then maybe between the two of us we made something good. Even if I tried my hardest to screw it up, I laughed despite myself. Yeah, maybe. The retrospective of my work opened that fall at the Portland Museum of Art. 15 years of documentaries, from my earliest student films to my most recent projects. The museum gave me an entire gallery with clips playing on multiple screens, still photographs from my shoots mounted on the walls, and a timeline showing the evolution of my work. The opening night was surreal. Hundreds of people came, critics, other filmmakers, people whose stories I'd told. Jasmine gave a speech about my commitment to truth and social justice. Sarah Chen cried during her introduction, talking about the scared college student I'd been and the fierce artist I'd become. And my father stood to the side, watching it all with something that looked like wonder. Afterward, as the crowd thinned, he approached me. Can I show you something? He led me to a quiet corner of the gallery, to a photograph I hadn't noticed before. It was mounted separately with a small placard beneath it. The photo showed a little girl, maybe 8 years old, laughing on a beach. She was holding hands with a woman who looked exactly like her, same dark hair, same bright eyes. Both of them were soaked, clothes dripping, clearly having just been knocked over by a wave. That's you and your mother, he said softly. Oregon coast. You don't remember, you were so young, but it was one of the happiest days of my life. Watching you two together. I stared at the photo. I didn't remember the day, but I remembered the feeling. Being completely, utterly loved. Where did you find this? I've had it in my office for 30 years on my desk. Every single day. I never saw it when I visited. I put it in a drawer when Diane was around. She didn't like reminders of Margaret. Said it was unhealthy to dwell on the past. He shook his head. Another red flag I ignored. Why did you bring it tonight? Because the museum asked for a personal item to include in the retrospective. Something that mattered to you. And I realize this photo is the bridge between who you were and who you became. Between your mother's love and the artist you are now. I touched the frame gently. Thank you for keeping it, for bringing it. Thank you for letting me be here, for giving me another chance to get this right. We stood together, looking at the photo of a little girl who had no idea how much loss was coming, but also how much strength she'd find. How much courage. 6 months later, I won my first major award, the Peabody, for my foster care documentary. The ceremony was in New York, black tie, televised. I brought Jasmine as my +1. But when I gave my acceptance speech, I talked about my father. This film is about kids who aged out of foster care without families to support them. Kids who had to find their own way. And in researching it, I learned something important. Family isn't just who raised you. It's also who shows up when you need them. Who does the work to change? Who earns your trust even after breaking it? I looked directly at the camera. My father and I lost each other for a long time, but we're finding our way back. And that's what this award represents to me. The possibility of change, of growth, of second chances, not because people deserve them, but because we choose to give them. I saw the clip later. My father, watching from home in Oregon, crying openly. The next day, he called. I recorded your speech, he said. I've watched it 20 times. That's a little obsessive, Dad. Probably. But I can't believe, after everything, you acknowledged me. Publicly, generously. I told the truth. That's what I do. The truth is I don't deserve your grace. Maybe not. But I deserve to give it, because holding on to anger was killing me. Letting it go is for me, not you. I love you, Maya. I don't think I've said that enough, or at all really, in the past 20 years. But I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm grateful every day that you're my daughter. My throat tightened. I love you too, Dad. It was the first time I'd said it in almost 2 decades. And I meant it, not because he'd earned it. Not because the past was erased, but because I'd learned something crucial. You can acknowledge pain without letting it define you. You can hold people accountable and still choose connection. You can be hurt and still be whole. I'm sitting on my father's deck, watching the river catch the afternoon light. My new film just finished its run at Sundance, a documentary about adult children estranged, from their families and the complex paths to reconciliation or acceptance. It's my most personal work. Yet my father appears with 2 mugs of coffee. He's 70 now, fully retired, spending his days reading, kayaking, and volunteering with a youth mentorship program. He looks happier than I've ever seen him. How'd the call with the distributor go? He asks. Good. They want to do a limited theatrical release. And Netflix is interested in streaming rights. That's fantastic. He beams. Then more carefully, is our story in there? The film? Parts of it. Anonymized, woven in with 6 other families. And you're okay with that? Sharing something so private? I spent my whole childhood being silenced. I'm done with that. Besides, if our story helps even one person, one daughter who thinks she's alone, one father who realizes what he's missing, it's worth it. He nods. Can I see it? Before it's released? Are you sure? It's honest. I want to see how you see the world, especially when it's uncomfortable. So we watch it together that evening, on the laptop, sitting side by side on the couch. He watches in silence, occasionally wiping his eyes. When it's over, he sits for a long moment. That was devastating, he says finally. And beautiful. And so important. You're not angry? About how I portrayed things? Why would I be angry at the truth? It's not flattering. But it's accurate. And that's what matters. He turns to me. Maya, I want to fund it. Dad, we talked about this. I know. But this is different. This isn't about our relationship. This is about getting an important film into the world. Films like this save lives. Change lives. Let me be part of that. Not as your father trying to buy your forgiveness. I hope we're past that. But as someone who believes in this work. I study his face. There's no manipulation there. No agenda. Just genuine belief. Okay, I say. But as an anonymous donor, I don't want people thinking this is some vanity project. Deal. We shake on it, both of us smiling. Later, as I'm leaving, he stops me at the door. Maya, I've been thinking about something Dr. Nguyen said. About making amends. Okay. I can't give you back your childhood. Can't erase the years you spent feeling invisible and unwanted. But I can make sure other kids don't go through that. What do you mean? I'm setting up a foundation. For kids in situations like you were, families where they're being neglected or emotionally abused, but it's not obvious enough for intervention. Funding for therapy, mentorship programs, emergency housing if they need to get out, art supplies, camera equipment for kids who want to tell stories. My eyes fill. Dad, I'm calling it the Margaret Hartwell Foundation. After your mother, because she would have protected you if she'd lived, and because you inherited her ability to see people who are overlooked. That's incredible. I want you on the board, if you're willing. I know you're busy, but this feels like something we could do together. Something that matters. I don't hesitate. Yes, absolutely yes. He pulls me into a hug. These come easier now. Natural, warm. Thank you. He whispers, for not giving up on me, for teaching me that it's never too late to change. Thank you for doing the work, for showing up, for becoming the father I needed, even if it took 30 years. Better late than never? I laugh. Yeah, better late than never. As I drive home through the twilight, past the familiar Portland streets, I think about the girl I was. The one who learned to disappear, who found her voice through a camera lens, who survived by documenting other people's pain because her own was too big to name. I think about the woman I am now, Still behind the camera. Still telling stories, but no longer hiding behind them. I think about my father and the long, difficult road we've walked together. About forgiveness, not as absolution, but as release. Not as forgetting, but as choosing to move forward anyway. I think about Diane and Tori, who I haven't seen or heard from in 5 years, who moved to Arizona last I heard, starting over under different names. I don't hate them anymore. I don't think about them much at all, because I learned something crucial through all of this. You don't heal by getting revenge. You heal by building a life so full of purpose and love and meaning that the people who hurt you become footnotes instead of chapters. You heal by choosing, every day, to be better than what was done to you. You heal by telling the truth, yours, and others, until truth-telling becomes second nature. And you heal by accepting that some bridges can be rebuilt, some relationships can be resurrected, and some people can change, if both sides are willing to do the hard, painful, unglamorous work. My phone buzzes. A text from Dad. Forgot to tell you. First board meeting for the foundation is next Tuesday, 7 p.m., pizza provided. Don't be late. I smile and text back. Wouldn't miss it. And I mean it. After everything. After the pain and the silence and the betrayal and the slow, hard work of reconstruction, I finally have what I always wanted. Not a perfect family. Not an erased past. Just a father who sees me. Who shows up. Who tries. And somehow, impossibly, that's enough.